The sun hung low in the sky, painting the barren landscape in hues of amber and crimson. Shadows stretched along the jagged stones, and the air shimmered with heat. Yarrick adjusted the brim of his adventurer's hat, its worn leather cracked from years under the relentless sun. The faintest breeze stirred his poncho, which swayed with a whisper against the dust-laden air. He sighed, his dark tan skin glistening with the sheen of a long day's journey, and his Fu Manchu mustache twitched at his lips curled in frustration. "Now I wish I had those little shits," he muttered, his voice carrying the faint echo of longing. He paused, his sharp eyes scanning the lifeless expanse of stone and dirt, the emptiness pressing against his resolve. They were so helpful. A heavy sigh escaped him, and he pulled the hat lower over his eyes as if to shield himself from the glare, and perhaps from the enormity of the task ahead. Now, how am I going to build this? Could I even begin to master this process? The words hung in the still air unanswered. Before he could ponder further, a shout shattered the quiet. "Hey, there he is." The voice was distant, but unmistakably hostile. Yarrick groaned, a sound of exasperation tinged with inevitability. "Oh, poppycock." In one fluid motion, he spun on his heels, pistols drawn, their black onyx barrels gleaming faintly in the fading sunlight. His sharp gaze locked onto the movement ahead, two figures lurching towards him. Their fungal forms, grotesque and otherworldly, swayed unnaturally with each step. Yarrick didn't hesitate. His revolvers barked in unison, and the two spore guards crumpled, their decayed bodies releasing faint clouds of toxic spores that dissipated in the air. Yarrick bolted, his boots crunching against the jagged stones underfoot. The terrain was unforgiving, each uneven step threatening to twist an ankle or send him sprawling. As he ran, the weight of the moment pressed on him. "Then what's this about?" he panted, his words barely audible over the pounding of his heart. His eyes caught something peculiar, a glint of light reflecting off a thin thread poking from the ground. It shimmered faintly, like a lone star in desolation. Curiosity gripped him, as it often did. He crouched, fingers brushing the dusty surface before gripping the thread. With a firm tug, he pulled. "Oh shit," he exclaimed as the ground beneath him began to tremble violently. The earth tore apart like a seam ripped from an old coat. Yarrick stumbled back, wide-eyed, as a massive F-shaped statue emerged from the ground. Its surface was intricately carved with deep concentric rings that seemed to hum with an ancient energy. At its core, twin eyes glowed with molten orange flames, their light pulsating rhythmically. The glow cast spirals across Yarrick's face, bathing him in an otherworldly radiance. For a moment, he stood frozen, transfixed by the hypnotic dance of light. The sharp crack of gunfire snapped him back to reality. Bullets ricocheted off the statue, and Yarrick dove for cover, rolling behind its massive base. His breath came in short bursts as he peeked out, scanning the horizon. 16 spore soldiers advanced, their fungal forms moving with eerie synchronization. Their weapons glinted menacingly under the sun. "Looks like I'm pinned," Yarrick muttered, his voice grim. He tightened his grip on his revolvers, his knuckles whitening. "Are these Imperium? Can't be. There were only two before. This could be bad." Despite the odds, a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "All right, then. Let's go." Yarrick darted out from behind the statue, his revolvers roaring to life. Smoke curled from the barrels as each shot found its mark. The spore soldiers fell like marionettes with their strings cut, their bodies collapsing in puffs of decayed spores. Yarrick moved with precision, rolling into the fray and dodging erratic fire. His path took him toward a distant stone wall composed of overlapping pillars, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each stride. Suddenly, an explosion tore through the air. The fortress stone he had been sprinting toward erupted in a cloud of chalky white dust, forcing him to the ground. Coughing, Yarrick waved away the debris, his face a mix of irritation and disbelief. "Well, so much for cover," he muttered, brushing the dust off his poncho. The remaining spores closed in, their fungal forms casting grotesque shadows in the fading light. Yarrick rose, his jaw set with determination. He fired 4 precise shots, each bullet finding its target. The spores collapsed, their bodies releasing a final puff before falling still. Smoke wafted from his revolvers as he chuckled to himself. "At least this is fun," he said under his breath, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Just another day in paradise." More soldiers emerged, but Yarrick moved with calculated agility, weaving between the remaining pillars. His movements were fluid, almost like a deadly dance. He reloaded with practiced ease, a sly grin spreading across his face. "Life is what you make it," he quipped, his voice tinged with dark humor. In a daring maneuver, Yarrick rolled into the center of the remaining soldiers. Rising with a flourish, he unleashed a whirlwind of gunfire, spinning in place as each shot found its mark. The soldiers fell in unison, their bodies forming a grotesque ring around him. The battlefield fell silent, save for the faint crackle of the distant statue's fiery core. Yerrick dusted off his poncho, his expression a mix of relief and smug satisfaction. Okay, my belief is here now. But there was no time to celebrate. His instincts screamed a warning, and he sprinted toward the stone wall, his heart pounding. As he rounded a corner, he skidded to a halt, coming face to face with 4 more Spore soldiers. Enough, one of them snarled, its voice cold. You will not go any further. Yerrick smirked, his eyes narrowing as he sized them up. Oh, will you stop me? The soldiers raised their weapons, their fungal visages unreadable. Yerrick's fingers twitched, his thumb brushing the trigger. He squeezed, but the only sound was a hollow click. Oh fuck, he muttered, his grin vanishing. The spores surged forward, their stun blast crackling with energy. Yerrick was hit, the force knocking him back against the sigil-covered stone. The glowing patterns danced chaotically, mirroring the chaos of the moment. His hands were cuffed, the gold metal biting into his wrists. Another shock coursed through his body, and he gritted his teeth against the pain as they hauled him to his feet. Why are you after me? Yerrick demanded. His voice was strained. I didn't even do anything. You murdered Akar, one of the soldiers snarled. What? Yerrick's brow furrowed in confusion. That hasn't even happened yet. We're here to stop you before it does, the soldier replied, its tone devoid of empathy. Yerrick's mind raced. Time was against him, but he had one last trick. Biting down on a hidden blue berry embedded in his collar, he snapped the stem like a pin. The berry released a small explosion, shattering his cuffs. Without hesitation, Yerrick reached for the black onyx stone at his belt. It expanded in his hand, elongating into a sleek glaive with an edge that gleamed ominously. He moved like a predator, each strike precise and lethal. The first soldier fell, then the second. With a final lunge, Yerrick skewered the remaining 2. The air was heavy with the acrid scent of decayed spores and burnt energy. In the distance, he heard reinforcements approaching, a faint rhythmic stomp that grew louder with each passing second. Thank you, Yerrick murmured, almost to himself, before sprinting back into the chaotic expanse of stones. Behind him, a new group of Spore soldiers arrived at the site. Their leader pointed south, his voice sharp and commanding. He went this way, the leader barked. Go. We can't let him get away, whatever it takes. The soldiers fanned out, their weapons raised, as the sigils on the shattered stones pulsed faintly in the fading light.